This story is based on a small detail in the Gospel of John. The author has imagined most of the inner thoughts and setting, while respecting the main events.
He was the only person in the Gospels who looked Jesus in the eyes, was loved by Jesus, and still walked away. You know the story. A rich young ruler runs up to Jesus, kneels, asks the question everyone wants to ask. What must I do to have eternal life? Jesus looks at him, and the Bible says something strange, something most sermons skip. It says Jesus loved him, right there, in the middle of the rejection, before the young man turns his back. Jesus loved him, and then the man left. His name, the Bible never tells you, but I think I know who he was, and I think he came back. The sun is setting over the hills east of Jerusalem. Dust hangs in the air like smoke. A young man stands alone on a rooftop. His clothes are expensive, fine linen, purple trim. His hands are soft. He's never worked a day in his life, but his face looks like someone who just lost a war. Below him, the city is waking up for evening prayer. Lamps flicker in windows. Families gather. The sound of children laughing. He hears none of it, because 3 hours ago, he walked away from the only person who ever really saw him. A single string on a cello, low, unresolved, like a question that won't close. Earlier that day, by the Jordan River, a crowd had gathered around Jesus. Sick people, desperate people, people with nothing left. And then, this young man appears. His donkey is expensive. His cloak is perfect. He doesn't belong here. The crowd parts for him, not out of respect, out of confusion. What's he doing here? A woman whispers to her husband. Looking for something money can't buy, the husband says. And he laughs, but not a happy laugh. The young man hears them. His face turns red, but he keeps walking toward Jesus. There's a beggar sitting by the roadside. His name is Eleazar. He's been blind since birth. He can't see the young man's fine clothes, but he can hear the jingle of coins in his purse. Eleazar reaches out. A coin, sir. For a man who cannot see, the young man stops. For a second, he reaches for his purse. Then he pulls his hand back. I have nothing to give you, he says. But that's a lie. His purse is full. Eleazar doesn't say anything. He just lowers his head. And the young man feels something strange, something he's never felt before. Shame. Not because he didn't give, but because he knew he couldn't give. Not yet. His hands were still full of things he wasn't ready to let go. The sound of coins shifting in a leather pouch. Then silence. Jesus is sitting on a stone. His feet are dusty. His robe is plain. He looks tired. But when he sees the young man approaching, something changes in his eyes. This is not curiosity. This is not surprise. This is recognition. Jesus already knows this young man's name. He knows his father's house. He knows the prayers his mother whispered over his bed at night. He also knows what's coming. And here's the part no one talks about. Jesus could have stopped him. He could have said, "Wait, let me explain differently. Let me give you an easier path." But he didn't, because love doesn't force. Love offers, and then it lets you walk away. And this is where everything breaks. Because the young man didn't walk away angry, he walked away sad, deeply, terribly sad. The Bible says he went away grieving, not storming, not arguing, just grieving, like a man leaving the love of his life at the altar. He runs through the conversation in his head, over and over. You lack one thing. Jesus said, one thing. He had everything. Money, power, respect, a future. But Jesus pointed to the one shelf in his heart he had locked and labeled, "Do not open. Sell everything. Give to the poor. Then come, follow me." He wanted to say yes. He really did. For 1 second, maybe 2, he imagined it. Empty hands, no security, no name, just following. But then fear reached up from his stomach and grabbed his throat. What if I lose everything? What if he's not who he says he is? What if I'm wrong? So he smiled, a tight, polite smile, the kind rich people use to say no without saying no. And he turned. 1 step, then another, then 10. He didn't look back, because he knew if he looked back, he wouldn't be able to leave. Footsteps in dry dust, slowly fading. Then a long, hollow silence. But here's what no one notices. The crowd didn't mock him. The disciples didn't whisper. Even the beggar Eleazar didn't curse him. They all just watched, because something about that moment felt heavy, like they had just witnessed something sacred collapse. Peter, the fisherman, stepped forward. "Master, should I go after him?" Jesus shook his head. "No." "Why not?" Jesus looked at the road where the young man had disappeared. "Because he's not done yet." What did Jesus mean? He's not done yet. Did the rich young ruler ever come back? And if he did, why didn't anyone write it down? A door closing somewhere in the distance. Soft, final, but then a key turning. Remember the name Eleazar, the blind beggar by the roadside. He couldn't see the young man's face, but he heard something else, something that will matter before this story ends. Here is what the Bible doesn't tell you. The rich young ruler had a name, and his name changes everything. The Gospels hide it for a reason. Not because it was forgotten, but because it was dangerous. You see, this man wasn't just rich. He wasn't just young. He was connected. His family had power. His father sat in councils. His uncle commanded soldiers. And when he walked away from Jesus that day, he didn't just walk back to his estate. He walked back to a conspiracy. The sun has fully set now. The young man is still on the rooftop. But he's not alone anymore. A servant climbs the stairs, carrying a clay oil lamp. The flame flickers in the wind. "Master," the servant whispers, "your father is asking for you." The young man doesn't move. "Tell him I'm not well." The servant hesitates. "Master, there are visitors, men in dark robes. They came through the back gate. They don't want to be seen." Now the young man turns. His eyes are red, not from crying, from something worse. From the beginning of a decision he knows he will regret. "Who are they?" The servant lowers his voice. "They are from the temple, the chief priest's men." Downstairs, in a room lit by a single candle, 3 men sit on cushions. They haven't touched the wine. They haven't touched the bread. They are waiting. The young man enters. He doesn't sit. "I saw him today," he says. His voice is flat, empty. One of the visitors leans forward, "And he asked me to give everything away." The visitor smiles, not a kind smile, a smile that says, "I told you so. What did I tell you?" He's dangerous. He doesn't want your money. He wants your obedience. And once he has that, he'll want your army, your family, your name. The young man shakes his head. He's not like that. "Then why did you walk away?" Silence. The young man has no answer, because he doesn't understand himself why he walked away. He only knows that his feet moved before his heart could stop them. The visitor stands. "We have a proposition for you. The chief priest wants us to know everything Jesus says, everything he does, every place he goes. You want me to spy on him. I want you to protect your family." Jesus is gathering followers, crowds. Soon the Romans will notice, and when they do, they will crush everyone connected to him, including you, unless you help us first. The young man looks at the floor. He thinks about Jesus' eyes, the way they held no judgment, only love. Then he thinks about his father, his inheritance, his reputation. "I'll think about it," he says. The visitor picks up his robe. "Don't think too long. The window is closing." They leave the way they came, through the back gate, into the darkness. Now, let me tell you something most people miss. The rich young ruler is the only person in the Gospels who walked away from Jesus and was never condemned for it. Think about that. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Jesus restored him. Thomas doubted the resurrection. Jesus showed him his wounds. Paul murdered Christians. Jesus transformed him. But this young man, he just left. And Jesus let him go. Why? Because Jesus knew something the young man didn't know yet. The young man wasn't walking away from God. He was walking toward his breaking point. And sometimes, the only way to break is to hit bottom first. Eleazar, the blind beggar, is still sitting by the roadside. It's night now. Cold. He pulls his cloak tighter. His friend Nathan sits beside him. Nathan can see. Nathan has been his eyes for 20 years. "You're quiet tonight," Nathan says. Eleazar doesn't answer for a long time. Then, "The rich man who passed by today, the one who wouldn't give me a coin. What about him?" I heard his voice crack. Crack how? Like he wanted to cry but forgot how. Nathan scoffs. "Rich men don't cry. They have too much to lose." Eleazar shakes his head. "No, that's why they cry the most, because they have the most to lose." He pauses. "And I heard something else." "What?" When he walked away, His feet were heavy, not fast, not angry, heavy, like each step cost him something. Nathan doesn't understand, but Eleazar does, because Eleazar has been blind his whole life. He knows what it sounds like when someone is dying inside. 3 days pass. The young man doesn't sleep. He lies in his bed at night, staring at the ceiling. The conversation with Jesus plays on repeat. Sell everything, give to the poor, then come, follow me. He gets up, walks to his treasury room, opens the chest. Gold, silver, coins from a dozen nations. He picks up a handful, lets them fall through his fingers. The sound is beautiful. He's always loved that sound, but now it sounds like chains. He closes the chest, locks it, puts the key under his pillow. Then he gets dressed, in the dark, and walks out of his house. No servants, no guards, no donkeys, just him, walking through the streets of Jerusalem, toward the last place he saw Jesus. But Jesus isn't there. The Jordan River is empty. Just water, just reeds, just the wind. The young man stands at the water's edge, the same spot where he knelt just days ago. He whispers to the wind, "I came back." No answer. I want to say yes now. Nothing. He falls to his knees. Mud soaks through his fine robe. He doesn't care. "I'll sell everything. I'll give it all away. Just tell me again. Give me another chance." The water moves. The wind blows. But Jesus is not there. And that's when the young man realizes something terrifying. Jesus didn't chase him. Not because he didn't love him, but because the young man had already been given the only invitation he would ever receive. And he had said no. There is no third chance. Not like this. Not the same way. Water lapping against the shore. Lonely. Relentless. He stays there all night. At dawn, a fisherman finds him, kneeling in the mud, face wet, but not from the river. "Are you all right?" the fisherman asks. The young man looks up. His eyes are empty. "Does God ever stop calling?" he asks. The fisherman doesn't know how to answer, but then he looks closer at the young man's face, and he recognizes him. "You're the one, the rich ruler, the one who walked away." The young man nods. The fisherman sits down beside him, doesn't say anything, just sits. After a long silence, the fisherman speaks. "I denied him, you know." The young man turns. "What? Jesus? I denied I even knew him. 3 times, in one night, while he was being beaten in the next room." The young man stares. "And he took you back." The fisherman looks at the rising sun. "He looked at me, across the courtyard, right in the middle of my denial, and his eyes, they weren't angry, they were sad, but not for him, for me." The fisherman wipes his nose. "I thought I was done, finished, unforgivable." But then, 3 days later, he sent an angel to tell me first, before anyone else, "Tell Peter I am risen." The young man's breath catches. "Peter, that's me. I'm Peter, and I'm telling you, he's not done with you yet." But how could Peter be so sure? And what happened next? When the young man finally found Jesus again, was it too late? Or was it exactly the right time? A bird singing at dawn, then footsteps, walking away from the river. Not heavy this time. Lighter. Remember Eleazar's ears. He heard something that day that no one else did, and soon you'll hear it too. The young man's name was Joseph. Not the Joseph you're thinking of. Not Mary's husband. Not the one with the coat of many colors. A different Joseph, but one just as important. His father was a merchant. Ships, spices, silk from the east. His family owned half the trade routes into Jerusalem. When Joseph walked into a room, people stood up. When Joseph spoke, people listened. And Joseph had just spent the night kneeling in mud at the Jordan River. Now he's walking home, clothes filthy, eyes swollen, hair matted. The servants see him coming. They whisper. They've never seen their master like this. His mother meets him at the door. She's been up all night, worried. "Where were you?" she asks. Her voice is sharp, but her eyes are soft. Joseph doesn't answer. He walks past her, up the stairs, into his room, and closes the door. His mother stands in the hallway, listening. She hears nothing, not crying, not praying, not moving, just silence. And silence from Joseph was the loudest thing in the world. 3 more days pass. Joseph doesn't eat, doesn't sleep. He just sits on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall. His father comes to see him. The old man is angry, not at Joseph. At the situation, the priests came again. His father says, they want an answer. They want to know if you'll help them watch Jesus. Joseph doesn't respond. Son, I built this empire for you. Every brick, every ship, every coin. It's yours, but only if you protect it. Rome is watching. The priests are watching. And that man you knelt before, he's a wildfire. Either you help contain him, or you burn with him. Joseph finally speaks. His voice is dry, cracked. What if I want to burn? His father steps back like he's been slapped. You don't mean that, Father. He looked at me, really looked at me. No one has ever done that. Not you, not Mother, not any of the women I've paid to love me. He saw through everything, and he still loved me. His father's jaw tightens. Love doesn't ask you to lose everything. That's exactly what love asks. The old man turns, walks to the door, stops. You have until the Sabbath. Then I'm giving the priests an answer, with or without you. The door closes. Joseph is alone again. Now, let me take you somewhere you've never been. Inside Joseph's mind, he's remembering something, a moment from his childhood. He was 7 years old. His father took him to the temple for the first time, the real temple, not the local synagogue, the big one. The one with gold and marble and priests who looked like angels. Joseph stood in the court of Israel. His father pointed to the holy place. That's where God lives. His father said. Joseph squinted. I can't see him. Of course you can't. No one can. That's what faith is. But Joseph didn't understand. How do you love someone you can't see? How do you follow someone who won't show his face? That question haunted him for 20 years, until he met Jesus. And Jesus had a face, a human face, with wrinkles from smiling, and tears from grieving, and eyes that didn't just look at you, they looked into you. For the first time in his life, Joseph felt like God was real. And then Jesus asked him to give up everything, and Joseph said no, not because he didn't believe, but because he was terrified that if he gave up everything and Jesus was wrong, he would have nothing left, not even his name. Eleazar the blind beggar is still sitting by the roadside. But something has changed. He's not begging anymore. He's just sitting, listening. Nathan, his friend, brings him bread. Why aren't you asking for coins? Eleazar tilts his head. I'm listening for something. What? I don't know yet, but it's coming. Nathan sighs. You've been strange ever since that rich man passed by. Eleazar nods. His feet told me a story. Heavy on the way in, heavier on the way out. But the heaviest wasn't when he left. When was it? When he stopped. Nathan frowns. Stopped where? Right in front of me. When I asked for a coin, he reached for his purse. Then he stopped. And in that stop I heard it. Heard what? Eleazar's blind eyes seemed to look at something far away, the sound of a man standing at a door, wanting to open it, but too afraid to turn the knob. Nathan doesn't understand, but he sits down anyway, because Eleazar has been right before. It's the day before the Sabbath. Joseph's father sends a messenger to the priests. The message is sealed with wax, the family crest pressed into it. Joseph watches from his window as the messenger rides away. He doesn't know what the message says, but he knows his father. His father protects the empire, always. Joseph walks to his treasury room, opens the chest again. The gold and silver gleam in the lamplight. He picks up a single coin, holds it close to his face. I hate you, he whispers to the coin. The coin says nothing. Of course it doesn't, but that's the problem. Coins never talk back. Coins never love. Coins never ask you to be better. Coins just sit there, cold, heavy, quiet. And Joseph has spent his whole life collecting things that don't love him back. He puts the coin down, closes the chest, but he doesn't lock it this time. He leaves the key in the lock. Then he walks out of his house, through the front gate this time, past the servants, past the guards. His mother calls after him. Joseph, where are you going? He doesn't answer. He just walks. He's going back to the Jordan River. But when he gets there, Jesus is not there. A group of fishermen are mending their nets. Joseph approaches them. Where is he? One of the fishermen looks up. It's Peter, the same man who sat with him in the mud. Joseph. Yes, where is Jesus? Peter stands, wipes his hands on his tunic. He's in Bethany, at the house of Simon the leper. But Joseph, You can't go there. The priests have spies everywhere. If they see you with us, I don't care. Peter looks at Joseph's eyes. They're different now. Not empty, not sad, desperate. But not the bad kind of desperate. The kind that comes right before a man finally opens the door he's been afraid to touch. Simon's house is 2 hours east. Peter says, if you run, you can make it before sundown. Joseph doesn't wait. He starts running. Through the fields, past the sheep, past the olive groves. His fine robe catches on thorns. He tears it. Keeps running. His sandals break. He throws them off. Runs barefoot. The sun is dropping. Fast. Heavy breathing. Feet slapping against dry dirt. A heartbeat. Loud. Desperate. He arrives at Bethany as the sky turns orange. Simon's house is small, plain, nothing like Joseph's estate, but there's light coming from the window and voices and laughter. Joseph stands outside the door, his chest heaving, his feet bleeding, his robe torn. He raises his hand to knock, and then he stops. The same stop, the same hesitation, the same fear. What if he says no? What if I'm too late? What if I already used my only chance? His hand hovers in the air. Inside, the laughter continues. They don't know he's there. Joseph closes his eyes, and he remembers Eleazar's voice, the blind beggar. A coin. Sir, for a man who cannot see. Joseph didn't give him a coin, but Eleazar gave him something else. A question. What are you holding on to that's holding you back? Joseph opens his eyes, and he knocks. The door opens. A servant stands there. Yes, I'm here to see Jesus. The servant looks at Joseph's torn clothes, his bleeding feet, his desperate face. Who should I say is calling? Joseph takes a breath. My name is Joseph, son of Jacob, merchant of Jerusalem. He pauses, and I'm the man who walked away. The servant steps aside. Joseph walks in. What happened inside Simon's house? Did Jesus receive Joseph? Or did he say, I gave you your chance? You said no. It's too late. And if Jesus did receive him, what did Joseph have to do to prove he had changed? A door closing. But this time, no key turning, just silence. The kind of silence that comes after a storm. Remember Joseph's hand hovering at the door. That hesitation, that tiny moment between fear and faith. That's where the whole story lives. And soon you'll see why. The room inside Simon's house is small. Low ceiling, clay walls, the smell of lamb and herbs and sweat. About 15 people sit on cushions around a low table. Fishermen. Tax collectors, women who used to have other names before Jesus found them. They all turn when Joseph walks in. A man with torn clothes, bleeding feet, eyes wild. No one speaks. And then, from the corner of the room, a voice. Joseph. Jesus is sitting against the back wall, not at the head of the table, not on a throne, just sitting, like everyone else. His robe is plain. His hands are dirty. He looks like he's been walking all day. Because he has. He stands up. Slowly, the room holds its breath. Jesus walks toward Joseph. No anger in his face. No I told you so. No disappointment. Just stillness. Like a father who has been waiting by the window for a son who said he wouldn't come back. Joseph falls to his knees. Not the polite kneel of a rich man meeting a rabbi. The collapse of a man who has nothing left to hold him up. I'm sorry, Joseph whispers. His voice breaks. I'm so sorry. Jesus kneels down in front of him, eye to eye. For what? For walking away. For choosing money over you. For being afraid. Jesus doesn't say anything for a long moment. Then he reaches out, touches Joseph's face, wipes a tear from his cheek with his thumb. I knew you would come back. Jesus says. How? Jesus smiles. A small smile. The kind that holds more sadness than joy. Because I never stopped calling your name. You just couldn't hear me over the sound of your own fear. Now, let me stop here, because this is where most sermons end. The prodigal returns. The father runs. The party starts. But that's not what happened next. Not with Joseph. Because Joseph wasn't a prodigal son who wasted his inheritance on wild living. He was a rich man who kept everything and lost his soul. And Jesus didn't throw a party for him. Jesus gave him a test. You say you're sorry, Jesus says, still kneeling in front of Joseph. But sorry is a feeling. Follow me is an action. Joseph nods. I'll do anything. Jesus stands. helps Joseph to his feet. Go home, sell your estate. Every house, every field, every ship. Give the money to the poor, every coin. Then come back here. With nothing, the room goes silent. Even the disciples shift uncomfortably. Peter opens his mouth to speak. James puts a hand on his arm, stops him. Joseph looks at Jesus. All of it, all of it. What about my family? My mother, my father? They'll disown me. Jesus doesn't blink. I didn't say it would be easy. I said it would be life. Joseph stands there, torn robe, bleeding feet. The same choice in front of him. Give up everything or walk away again. But this time, he doesn't hesitate. Give me 3 days, Joseph says. For what? To say goodbye. Jesus nods. 3 days. Then I'm leaving for Jerusalem. If you're not back by then, I'll be back. Joseph turns, walks to the door, stops, looks back at Jesus one more time. You never told me your answer. Jesus tilts his head. What question? The one I asked at the Jordan River. What must I do to have eternal life? You told me to sell everything, but you never told me what comes after. Jesus smiles again, the same small smile. That's because I wanted you to find out for yourself. Joseph walks out into the night. His father is waiting in the courtyard when Joseph returns home. The old man's face is stone. The priests came again. His father says, "They know you went to see Jesus. They're not happy." Joseph doesn't respond. He walks past his father, into the house, up the stairs. His father follows. Where are you going? Joseph goes to the treasury room. The chest is still there, the key still in the lock. He opens it. Gold, silver, coins from a dozen nations. He starts pulling them out, piling them on the floor. His father watches, confused, then alarmed. What are you doing? I'm selling it all. What? Joseph turns to face his father. For the first time in his life, he doesn't look away. Father, I've spent 30 years collecting things that don't love me back. Gold doesn't hold you when you cry. Silver doesn't forgive you when you fail. This empire you built, it's just stuff. Beautiful stuff. Heavy stuff. But still just stuff. His father's face turns red. You're throwing away your inheritance for a homeless preacher. Joseph shakes his head. I'm not throwing it away. I'm giving it away. There's a difference. His father steps closer. His voice drops to a whisper, deadly quiet. If you do this, you are no longer my son. Joseph looks at his father's eyes. He sees fear there. Not anger, fear, because his father built everything on the belief that money was safety. And if Joseph walks away from that, then his father's whole life was a lie. I'll always be your son, Joseph says, but I can't be your reflection anymore. He walks out of the treasury room, leaves the chest open, the coins scattered. His father stands alone among the gold, shaking. 3 days. Joseph sells everything. The house, the land, the ships, the warehouses, the spices, the silks. He doesn't negotiate. He doesn't haggle. He takes whatever people offer and gives it away before the coin even cools in his hand. Widows, orphans, beggars, lepers. He walks through the streets of Jerusalem with bags of gold and empties them into the hands of strangers. Some of them recognize him. The rich man's son, the one who never gave anything. Now he can't stop giving. By the end of the second day, his hands are raw from reaching into the chest. His back aches from bending down to the poor. But his heart feels light for the first time in 30 years. He finds Eleazar, the blind beggar, still sitting by the roadside, still listening. Joseph kneels in front of him, pours a handful of silver into Eleazar's lap. Eleazar's blind eyes widen. Who is this? It's me, the man who wouldn't give you a coin. Eleazar's fingers touch the silver, then touch Joseph's face. You came back. I came back. Eleazar is quiet for a long time. Then he speaks. I heard something that day when you walked away from Jesus, something no one else heard. Joseph leans closer. What? When you stopped in front of me, when your hand went to your purse, your heart made a sound. A sound. It cracked. Just a little, right down the middle, like ice on a frozen river right before it breaks. Joseph closes his eyes. You heard that. I'm blind. Son, I hear everything. Joseph takes Eleazar's hand, holds it. Thank you. For what? For listening when no one else did. The third day, Joseph stands at the door of his empty house. The servants are gone. The guards are gone. His mother left that morning to stay with her sister. She couldn't watch him leave. His father is nowhere to be seen. Joseph takes one last look at the rooms where he grew up, the courtyard where he played as a boy, the treasury room where he learned that gold weighs more than you think. Then he walks out. No servants, no guards, no donkey. Just him, walking toward Jerusalem, toward Jesus, toward the life he almost missed. But here's what he doesn't know yet. The priests have been watching, and they're not happy. A rich man giving away his fortune to the poor. That's dangerous. That inspires others. That threatens the order of things. And there's something else, something the Bible doesn't tell you. Joseph wasn't just any rich man. He had a cousin who would betray Jesus with a kiss, a cousin named Judas. Judas Iscariot and Joseph were family. They grew up together, played together, dreamed together. And when Joseph gave away everything to follow Jesus, Judas was watching. What did Judas see in his cousin's choice? And why did it push him closer to his own betrayal? A single coin falling on stone, rolling, slowing, stopping, then footsteps, walking away from the sound. Remember the crack Eleazar heard in Joseph's heart? That crack didn't heal. It grew, and it connected to another crack, in another heart, in another man. And that connection changed history. Judas Iscariot. The name alone makes people flinch. The betrayer, the traitor, the man who sold the Son of God for 30 pieces of silver. But here's what no one tells you. Judas had a cousin who was just as rich, just as connected, just as torn. And that cousin's name was Joseph. They grew up together in the hills outside Jerusalem. Two boys from wealthy families. Two boys who had everything except what they actually wanted. Judas was older by 2 years. Dark hair, darker eyes, a mind that never stopped calculating. Joseph was softer, more hesitant, the one who followed rather than led. When they were boys, they would sneak out at night and sit on the roof of Joseph's house, looking at the stars, talking about God. "Do you think he's real?" Judas would ask. "I don't know," Joseph would say, "but I hope so." Why? Because if he's not, then this is all there is, and that's not enough. Judas would laugh, not a happy laugh, a hollow one. Maybe that's why we invented him, because this isn't enough. Joseph never had an answer for that, not then. But now, walking toward Jerusalem with empty hands and a light heart, he finally has an answer, and Judas is the first person he sees. The road to Jerusalem is crowded. Pilgrims, merchants, families heading to the temple for Passover. Joseph is walking against the flow, heading toward Bethany, toward Jesus, and then he sees a figure standing by a fig tree, a man in a dark robe, a leather purse at his belt. Judas. The two cousins stare at each other. Joseph hasn't seen Judas in months, not since before he knelt at the Jordan River, not since before everything changed. Judas looks thinner. His eyes are darker. There's a tightness in his jaw that wasn't there before. "Joseph," Judas says. His voice is flat. "Judas, I heard what you did. Sold everything. Gave it away. The whole city is talking about it." Joseph nods. "It's true." Judas steps closer. His eyes scan Joseph's torn robe, his bare feet, his empty hands. "You look like a beggar. I feel like a free man." Judas laughs, the same hollow laugh from childhood. "Free? You have nothing. No house, no money, no future. That's not freedom. That's madness." Joseph doesn't flinch. "You're following him too, aren't you?" "Jesus." Judas's face tightens. "I am." Then you know what he asks. Judas looks away, toward Jerusalem, toward the temple, toward something Joseph can't see. He asks too much. Judas whispers, "What do you mean?" Judas turns back. His eyes are wet, not with tears, with something harder. He could take the throne. Joseph. He could overthrow Rome. He has the crowds. He has the power, but he won't. He keeps talking about suffering, about dying, about a kingdom that isn't here. Judas's voice rises. "What good is a kingdom you can't see?" Joseph looks at his cousin, really looks, and for the first time, He sees something he never noticed before. Judas isn't following Jesus because he loves him. Judas is following Jesus because he wants to use him. And what good is a kingdom you can only hold with violence? Joseph asks. Judas doesn't answer. He just turns and walks away, toward Jerusalem, toward the priests, toward the 30 pieces of silver that are already burning a hole in his imagination. Joseph watches him go, and he prays for the first time in years. Not a temple prayer, not a memorized prayer, just 3 words. Help him, please. Joseph finds Jesus in Bethany, at the house of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, the same house where something extraordinary is about to happen. Mary is there. Martha is cooking. Lazarus is sitting in the corner, still haunted by the 4 days he spent dead. And Jesus is reclining at the table. Joseph walks in, empty hands, bare feet, torn robe. The disciples stare at him. They remember him, the rich young ruler who walked away, the one who came back, the one Jesus told to sell everything. And here he is, with nothing. Jesus looks up, sees Joseph, and smiles. Not the small smile from before, a real one. Wide, warm. You came back. Jesus says, you said 3 days, and you had 3 days. Today is the 4th. Joseph nods. I got lost saying goodbye. Jesus stands, walks to Joseph, puts a hand on his shoulder. No, you got found. Jesus turns to the room, to the disciples, to Mary and Martha and Lazarus. This man had everything, and he gave it all away. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. Remember him, because what he has done will be told wherever the gospel is preached. The room is silent. Then Mary stands, walks to Joseph, takes his hand. Welcome home, she says. And for the first time in his life, Joseph believes those words are true. But here's where the story takes a turn, a dark one. Because the priests in Jerusalem have been watching Joseph, watching him give away his fortune, watching him inspire others, and they are terrified. One rich man giving away his money is strange. 2 rich men doing the same is a movement, and a movement threatens everything they've built. So they send for Joseph, not with guards, not with threats, with an invitation. Come to the temple. The chief priest wants to speak with you privately. Joseph knows it's a trap, but he goes anyway, because he's not afraid anymore. He's not afraid of losing what he's already given away. The temple is crowded. Pilgrims, sacrifices, smoke from the altar. Joseph is led through a side door, down a corridor, into a room with no windows. The chief priest is sitting on a stone chair. His robes are expensive. His face is old. His eyes are cold. Joseph, son of Jacob, the priest says, sit. Joseph doesn't sit. I prefer to stand. The priest smiles, a thin smile, the kind that doesn't reach his eyes. You've caused quite a stir, giving away your fortune. Following that, teacher from Galilee. His name is Jesus. Yes, I know his name. The priest pauses. I also know your cousin, Judas. Joseph's heart tightens. What about him? He's been helpful to us. He understands the situation in a way you don't. What situation? The priest leans forward. His voice drops. Jesus is dangerous, not because he's evil, because he's good. True goodness destabilizes everything. It makes the poor think they deserve better. It makes the rich feel guilty. It makes people like you give away fortunes and walk around barefoot like beggars. The priest stands. We can't have that. Joseph, Rome won't allow it, and neither will we. So what are you going to do? The priest walks to a small table, picks up a leather pouch, jiggles it. The sound of coins, silver, 30 of them. We're going to end this, quietly, and your cousin Judas is going to help us. Joseph feels the blood drain from his face. You're going to kill him. The priest doesn't answer. He doesn't have to. Joseph turns to leave. One more thing, the priest says. Joseph stops. If you warn him, if you tell anyone what I've told you, we will come for you and for your family, your mother, your father, everyone you love. Joseph doesn't turn around. He walks out of the room, through the corridor, through the temple courts, past the pilgrims and the sacrifices and the smoke. His heart is pounding, not with fear, with fury. He runs, all the way to Bethany, all the way to Jesus. He bursts into the house, breathless, sweating. Judas. He gasps. It's Judas. Jesus is sitting in the courtyard, calm, like he already knows. What about him? Jesus asks. He's going to betray you. The priests, 30 pieces of silver. I heard them. Jesus doesn't react, doesn't gasp, doesn't ask questions. He just looks at Joseph with those same eyes, the ones that see everything. I know, Jesus says. Joseph freezes. You know, I've always known. Then why haven't you stopped him? Why haven't you sent him away? Jesus stands, walks to Joseph, puts a hand on his shoulder, because Judas has to choose, just like you had to choose, just like everyone has to choose. But he'll destroy you. Jesus nods. Yes, he will. And you're just going to let it happen. Jesus looks up at the sky. The sun is setting. The sky is red. The Son of Man must suffer. Jesus says quietly, the scriptures must be fulfilled. And Judas is not my enemy. Joseph, he's a friend who forgot how to love. Joseph falls to his knees. Then what do I do? Jesus kneels with him. You stay. You watch. You remember. And when it's over, you tell the world what you saw. Joseph looks up, tears streaming down his face. I don't understand. Jesus smiles. The small smile again. You will. Not today, but soon. Joseph stayed. He watched. He saw everything. The betrayal, the trial, the cross, the tomb. But what did Joseph see that the other disciples missed? And why did the gospel writers hide his name? A hammer hitting a nail. Once, twice, 3 times. Then silence. The kind of silence that comes after something holy dies. Remember Joseph's empty hands. Those hands held gold, then held nothing. But soon, they will hold something else. Something heavier than gold. Something more precious than silver. And you won't believe what it is. The next few days were a blur. Joseph stayed close to Jesus, not as a disciple, not officially. He hadn't been chosen like the 12. He hadn't walked with them for 3 years. But he was there. In the crowd, when Jesus entered Jerusalem on the donkey, he heard the people shout, Hosanna. He saw their faces bright with hope. And he saw something else. Judas, standing at the edge of the crowd, not shouting, not smiling, just watching, calculating, his hand resting on the leather purse at his belt, the same purse that now held 30 pieces of silver. Joseph tried to catch his cousin's eye, but Judas looked away. Every time, that night, they ate together in an upper room in Jerusalem, the Last Supper. Joseph wasn't supposed to be there. The room was for the 12. But Peter saw Joseph standing outside and pulled him in. He's one of us now, Peter said, and no one argued. So Joseph sat against the wall, in the shadows, watching. Jesus washed the disciples' feet. One by one, Peter protested. Jesus knelt anyway. When Jesus got to Judas, he paused. Longer than with the others. He looked up at Judas's face, and Joseph saw something in Jesus's eyes that broke his heart. Not anger, grief. The kind of grief that comes when you love someone who has already decided to destroy you. Jesus washed Judas's feet, dried them with a towel, then stood, and he said something strange. One of you will betray me. The room went silent. The disciples looked at each other, confused, afraid. Lord, is it me? They asked. One by one, Joseph watched Judas. Judas didn't ask. He already knew. Jesus dipped a piece of bread in the bowl, handed it to Judas. What you are about to do, Jesus whispered. Do quickly. Judas took the bread, ate it, then stood and walked out into the night. The door closed behind him. Joseph wanted to run after him, grab him, shake him, beg him to stop. But he couldn't move. Because he remembered something. He remembered standing at the Jordan River, the same choice in front of him, the same fear in his chest. He had walked away too. The only difference was, he came back. Judas hadn't, not yet. And Joseph realized with a sickening feeling that he might never come back at all. The night got darker. Jesus took the disciples to a garden called Gethsemane. Joseph followed, stayed at the edge of the olive trees, watching. Jesus went off alone to pray. The disciples fell asleep. Joseph stayed awake. He heard Jesus crying, not weeping, not sobbing, crying like a child who has lost something irreplaceable. Father, if there is any other way, take this cup from me. Joseph pressed his hand against his mouth. He had never heard anyone pray like that. So honest, so raw, so afraid. And then, footsteps, many footsteps. torches, swords, clubs, the priest's men, and at the front of them, Judas. Joseph watched his cousin walk toward Jesus, toward the man whose feet he had washed, whose bread he had eaten. Judas stopped in front of Jesus. He raised his hand, and he kissed Jesus on the cheek. The signal, the betrayal, the moment that would echo through eternity. "Friend," Jesus said, "do what you came to do." The guards rushed forward, grabbed Jesus, tied his hands. The disciples ran. Peter pulled out a sword, swung it, cut off a man's ear. Jesus healed the ear, then let them take him. And Joseph didn't run. He stood in the shadows, watching, because Jesus had told him to stay, to watch, to remember, and he would not fail the only person who had ever truly loved him. They took Jesus to the house of the high priest. Joseph followed, at a distance, keeping to the shadows. He saw Peter outside, warming his hands by a fire. A servant girl pointed at Peter. "You were with him." Peter denied it 3 times. Joseph heard the rooster crow, saw Peter's face crumble, and Joseph understood. Fear makes liars of us all. He had lied too. At the Jordan River, when he said he had nothing to give Eleazar, when he smiled and walked away from Jesus. The only difference between him and Peter was timing. Peter denied Jesus after following him for 3 years. Joseph denied Jesus after knowing him for 3 days. Sin is sin. Fear is fear, and only love can burn both away. The trial was a joke. The priest had already decided. They just needed a reason. Witnesses lied. Accusations flew. Jesus stood silent. Finally, the high priest asked the question, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus looked at him. "I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power." The high priest tore his robes. Blasphemy. They spit on Jesus, hit him, covered his eyes, and struck him. "Prophesy. Who hit you?" Joseph stood in the back of the room, his fists clenched, his teeth grinding. He wanted to scream. He wanted to fight. But he remembered the priest's words in the temple. "If you warn him, we will come for your family." So he stayed silent, and that silence burned. The next morning, they took Jesus to Pilate, the Roman governor, the only man who could order a crucifixion. Pilate didn't want to do it. He saw that Jesus was innocent. He tried to release him, but the crowd shouted. The priests stirred them up. "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Joseph stood in the crowd. He saw faces he recognized, people Jesus had healed, fed, loved, and they were screaming for his blood. Joseph wanted to shout back, "Stop! Don't you remember? He gave you sight. He fed you bread. He raised your dead." But his voice was stuck. Fear again. Always fear. Pilate washed his hands. "I am innocent of this man's blood." The crowd answered, "His blood be on us and on our children." Joseph felt the words like stones thrown at his chest. He had given away his fortune, sold everything, followed Jesus, but he couldn't even open his mouth to defend him. What kind of follower was he? The crucifixion. Joseph couldn't watch it first. He stood at the back of the crowd, far away. The hill called Golgotha, the place of the skull. 3 crosses, Jesus in the middle. The soldiers gambled for his clothes. The priests mocked him. He saved others. He can't save himself. Joseph heard Jesus speak from the cross. "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Forgive them, not curse them, not call down fire. Forgive them." Joseph had never heard anything like it. Then Jesus looked down, saw his mother, saw John. "Woman, here is your son. John, here is your mother." Even in agony, Jesus was taking care of the people he loved. Joseph thought about his own father. The last words they spoke, "If you do this, you are no longer my son." Joseph hadn't spoken to him since. He wondered if his father was watching, if his father was there in the crowd. He hoped not. He couldn't bear the thought of his father seeing him cry. The sky turned black. In the middle of the day, darkness, like God had pulled a blanket over the earth. The crowd grew quiet. Even the priests stopped mocking. Something was wrong. Something was happening. And then Jesus cried out, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani." My God, why have you forsaken me?" Joseph's knees buckled. Forsaken, the one person Jesus trusted most, the Father he had prayed to in the garden, the Father he had called Abba. and even he had turned away, because he had to, because the sin of the world was on Jesus' shoulders, and God cannot look at sin. Joseph understood something in that moment. He had felt forsaken too, on the rooftop, at the Jordan River, in the empty house after his father disowned him, but his forsakenness was nothing compared to this. Jesus was alone, completely alone, so that Joseph would never have to be. And then, it is finished. Jesus bowed his head, and he died. The earth shook, rocks split, tombs opened. The centurion looked up at the sky, then at Jesus. Surely this man was the Son of God. Joseph fell to his knees in the dirt. The crowd dispersed, slowly, quietly. No one knew what to say, what to do. The Messiah was dead. It was over, or so they thought. Joseph stayed at the foot of the cross until the soldiers came to break the legs of the crucified men. But Jesus was already dead. They didn't need to break his legs. One soldier pierced his side with a spear. Blood and water flowed out. Joseph watched the blood drip onto the ground where he was kneeling. He reached out, touched the wet dirt. Blood on his fingers, the blood of the man who had loved him, the man he had walked away from, the man who had taken him back, and now the man who was gone. Joseph pressed his bloody fingers to his forehead. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." But there was no answer. Only the wind, only the silence, only the dead. Joseph stayed. He watched them take Jesus down from the cross, wrap his body in linen, lay him in a tomb. He watched them roll the stone across the entrance. He watched the soldiers seal it, and then he went home. But he didn't sleep, because something was bothering him. Something Eleazar the blind beggar had said. "I heard something that day. When you walked away from Jesus, your heart cracked, like ice on a frozen river right before it breaks." Joseph's heart had cracked, but it hadn't broken, not yet. And he knew, somehow he knew, that the breaking was still coming. A stone rolling, heavy, final. Then footsteps walking away. Then nothing, just nothing. Remember Joseph's bloody fingers, the blood of Jesus, on the hands of the man who walked away. Those hands will touch something soon, something that will change everything. The Sabbath was the longest day of Joseph's life. He couldn't cook, couldn't travel, couldn't work. According to the law, he couldn't even carry a coin from one room to another. Not that he had any coins left. He sat in a borrowed room, a small room, empty walls, a single mat on the floor. The room belonged to Mary, the mother of John Mark. She had taken him in when she heard what he had done, given away everything, followed Jesus. Now Jesus was dead, and Joseph sat on the floor, staring at the wall, trying to understand what had just happened. He had given up his fortune for a dead man. His family had disowned him for a corpse. He had followed a ghost, or so it seemed. But something kept nagging at him, something Jesus had said. The Son of Man must suffer. The scriptures must be fulfilled. Must, not might, not possibly, must. Joseph had heard that word before, in the temple, in the scrolls. The prophets all said the same thing. The Messiah would suffer. He would die. He would rise. But rise? No one actually believed that part. Rising was for stories, for legends, for things that didn't happen in real life. And yet, Joseph remembered Lazarus. Lazarus, who had been dead 4 days, wrapped in burial cloths, stinking, and Jesus had called him out of the tomb. If Jesus could raise Lazarus, Joseph stopped his own thought. "Don't go there," he told himself. "Don't hope. Hope is the cruelest thing. Hope is what kills you slowly." He had hoped at the Jordan River, hoped that Jesus would give him an easy answer, a cheap salvation. Instead, Jesus had asked for everything, and Joseph had given it. And now Jesus was gone. So Joseph sat in the empty room, and he didn't hope, he just waited. That night, after the Sabbath ended, Joseph went to find Peter. Peter was hiding. They were all hiding in the same upper room where Jesus had washed their feet. The doors were locked. The windows were covered. The disciples were terrified. The priests might come for them next. The Romans might round them up, crucify them too. Joseph knocked. A small knock. 3 taps. "Who is it?" Thomas's voice, shaky. "Joseph, the rich man, let me in." The door opened a crack, then wider. Joseph stepped inside. The room smelled like fear, sweat, candle wax, old bread. Peter was in the corner. His face was gray. His eyes were swollen. He hadn't slept, probably hadn't eaten. Mary Magdalene was there, weeping quietly. James and John sat together, not speaking. Thomas stood by the window, staring at nothing. And Judas wasn't there. No one said his name. No one wanted to. Joseph sat down next to Peter. I was there, Joseph said, at the cross. I saw it. Peter nodded, didn't look up. I saw you too, at the fire. When the girl asked if you knew him, Peter's jaw tightened. You denied him. 3 times. Peter's head dropped lower. I know, so did I. Peter looked up, confused. What do you mean? Joseph told him. About the Jordan River, about walking away, about the priests, about his father, about everything. When he finished, Peter was staring at him. You came back, Peter said. I came back, but he's gone now. Joseph nodded. He's gone. The 2 men sat in silence. Then Peter spoke, quietly, like he was admitting something he had never told anyone. When the rooster crowed, when I heard it, I ran out into the street and I cried, not like a man, like a child. Snot, tears, gasping for air. Joseph didn't say anything. I thought I was unforgivable. I thought he would never want me back. But he took you back. Peter nodded. He did. He looked at me across the courtyard, right in the middle of my denial, and his eyes said, I still love you. Peter's voice cracked. But now he's dead, Joseph, and I'll never hear him say it again. Joseph put his hand on Peter's shoulder. Maybe you will. Peter shook his head. Don't hope. It hurts too much. I know, Joseph said, but I can't stop. The next morning, before dawn, Joseph couldn't sleep anymore. He got up, walked through the dark streets of Jerusalem, toward the tomb. He didn't know why he was going. There was nothing to see, just a stone, just a dead body, just the end. But his feet took him there anyway. The city was quiet. The moon was low. The stars were fading. Joseph walked past the temple, past the Roman garrison, past the houses of the priests who had murdered Jesus. He hated them now, not with a hot hatred, with a cold one, the kind that settles in your bones and never leaves. They had killed the only person who ever loved him for free. No money, no power, no strings, just love. And they had killed him. Joseph reached the garden where the tomb was. The sun was just starting to paint the sky pink, and then he stopped. The stone was rolled away. Joseph's heart stopped, then started again. Too fast. He looked around. No soldiers, no guards, no one. Just an open tomb. He walked closer. His legs were shaking. He peered inside. The linen wrappings were there, folded neatly, but the body was gone. Joseph stumbled backward, fell against a tree. His mind was racing. The priests must have taken the body. That was it. They stole it to prevent the disciples from claiming a resurrection. Yes, that made sense. But why fold the cloths? Grave robbers don't fold. They grab and run. Joseph's hands were shaking. He ran back to the city, to the upper room, burst through the door. Peter, John, the tomb, it's empty. They stared at him. What do you mean, empty? The stone is rolled away. The body is gone. I saw it myself. Peter and John looked at each other. Then they ran. Joseph ran with them. They reached the tomb. Peter went in first. John followed. Joseph stood outside, waiting. Peter came out. His face was white. He's not there, Peter whispered. John came out. The cloths are folded. Someone folded them. They stood there. 3 men, staring at an empty tomb, and then Mary Magdalene arrived, breathless, crying. I saw him, she said. The 3 men turned. What? I saw him. Jesus. He spoke to me. He said my name. Peter grabbed her shoulders. Mary, are you sure? I know his voice. I would know it anywhere. Joseph's legs gave out. He sat down on the ground. Jesus was alive. The tomb was empty. The dead was living. And Joseph's heart, the one that had cracked at the Jordan River, finally broke. Not from grief, from joy. The kind of joy that shatters everything you thought you knew. They waited in the upper room all day. No one left. No one ate. They just sat, waiting. Peter kept looking at the door. John kept looking at the window. Mary kept crying and laughing at the same time. Joseph sat in the corner, his hands folded in his lap. Those hands had held gold. held silver, held coins from a dozen nations. Now they held nothing, and nothing was finally enough, because he had learned something in the past week. Possessions don't love you. Money doesn't hold you. Power doesn't save you. Only love does. Only love. And love had walked out of a tomb. That evening, the doors were locked again. The disciples were hiding again. And then, without a knock, without a sound, Jesus was there, standing in the middle of the room. "Peace be with you," he said. The disciples gasped. Some screamed. Thomas fell off his chair. Jesus showed them his hands, the holes from the nails, his side, the wound from the spear. "It's me," he said. "Don't be afraid." Peter ran to him, fell at his feet, wept. Jesus knelt down, lifted Peter's face. "Do you love me?" Jesus asked. "Yes, Lord. You know I love you. Feed my sheep." Again, "Do you love me?" "Yes, Lord. You know I love you. Tend my sheep." A third time, "Peter, do you love me?" Peter wept harder. "Lord, you know everything. You know I love you. Feed my sheep." 3 denials, 3 declarations. Peter was forgiven. Joseph watched from the corner. His heart was pounding. Would Jesus see him? Would Jesus speak to him? He wasn't a disciple. Not really. He was just a rich man who had walked away and then came back. Jesus turned, looked at Joseph. "Joseph." Joseph's breath caught. "Come here." Joseph stood, walked toward Jesus. His legs were shaking. Jesus took Joseph's hands, the empty hands, the hands that had given away everything. "You gave up your fortune for me." Jesus said, "I gave up nothing. I gained everything." Jesus smiled. The real smile, the wide one. "Now I'm going to ask you for something else. Anything." Jesus looked at the other disciples, then back at Joseph. "Tell them, the ones who will come after. Tell them about the man who walked away. Tell them that I waited. Tell them that I always wait." Joseph nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I'll tell them. I'll tell everyone." Jesus put his hand on Joseph's head, like a blessing, like a sending. "Then go, and don't be afraid anymore." Joseph went. He traveled. He told, he preached, but his story never made it into the Bible. Why? What happened to Joseph? And why did the gospel writers hide his name? A door opening, not a creaky door, a smooth one, the sound of freedom, then footsteps, walking away. Not heavy this time, light, like a man who has finally put down a weight he was never meant to carry. Remember Eleazar, the blind beggar? He heard Joseph's heart crack. Now someone else is about to hear something, and that someone is you. His name was Joseph, but that's not the name you know him by. History gave him a different name, a name that hides who he really was. They call him Joseph of Arimathea, a rich man, a member of the Sanhedrin, the same council that condemned Jesus to death. But the Gospels say he was a secret disciple, afraid of the Jews, waiting for the kingdom of God. And after the crucifixion, he went to Pilate, asked for the body of Jesus, took it down from the cross, wrapped it in linen, laid it in his own new tomb. That's all the Bible tells you. But that's not all there is, because Joseph of Arimathea and the rich young ruler, they are the same man, the man who walked away, the man who came back, the man who gave Jesus a tomb. Let me show you what happened after the resurrection. Joseph didn't stay in Jerusalem. He couldn't. The priests knew what he had done, giving Jesus a proper burial. A rich man's tomb. That was a statement, a rebellion. Joseph had chosen a side, and the priests wanted him dead. So Joseph fled, not because he was afraid, not anymore, because Jesus had told him to go, to tell the story, to tell the world about the man who walked away and was welcomed back. He traveled north, through Samaria, through Galilee, to the coast, to a place called Britain. Yes, Britain. The ancient stories say Joseph of Arimathea traveled to the edge of the world, to a small island covered in mist and rain, to a place called Glastonbury. He carried nothing but a staff and a memory, the memory of empty hands, the memory of bleeding feet, the memory of a man who said, "I never stopped calling your name." When Joseph arrived in Britain, the people there were pagans, Druids. They worshipped trees and stones and the sun, but they listened to him because Joseph didn't preach like a priest. He didn't build a pulpit. He didn't demand offerings. He just sat by their fires and told stories about a rich man who had everything and nothing, about a blind beggar who heard a heart crack, about a rabbi who washed feet and died for enemies and rose from a tomb. The Druids had never heard anything like it. "Your God died," they asked. "Yes," Joseph said. "Your God rose." "Yes." "And your God loves you, even when you walk away." Joseph smiled. "Especially when you walk away, because he knows you'll come back." One by one, they believed, not because Joseph argued, because Joseph was living proof. A rich man who gave away everything. A powerful man who became a servant. A man who walked away from God and was found. But here's where the story gets strange. Joseph brought something with him to Britain, something he had kept hidden since the day he took Jesus down from the cross. 2 small vessels. Some say they contain the blood of Jesus, collected from the wound in his side. Others say they contain the sweat of Jesus, wiped from his face on the road to Golgotha. But Joseph never told anyone what was inside. He just carried them everywhere, across the sea, through the forests, up the hill at Glastonbury. And when he reached the top of the hill, he stopped. He planted his staff in the ground, and the staff sprouted leaves, a dead stick, a piece of wood, buried in the earth, and it grew into a tree, a thorn tree, the Glastonbury thorn, still standing today, still blooming every Christmas, a reminder that death is not the end, a reminder that what is buried does not stay buried, a reminder that Joseph of Arimathea, the rich young ruler, carried the life of Jesus across the world. Now, let me tell you about the other Joseph, Joseph's cousin, Judas Iscariot. After he betrayed Jesus, Judas tried to give the silver back, 30 pieces, blood money. The priests refused, so Judas threw the coins on the temple floor, walked out, and hanged himself. That's what the Bible says. But here's what the Bible doesn't say. Judas wrote a letter before he died, a letter to Joseph. It was found by a servant days later, still on Judas's desk, still sealed. Joseph never opened it, not for years. He couldn't. The grief was too fresh, the betrayal too raw, the memory of his cousin's kiss too painful. But on the night before Joseph left for Britain, he opened it. The letter was short. "Joseph, you were always the brave one, not me. I followed Jesus because I wanted power. You followed him because you wanted love. I wanted a kingdom on earth. You wanted a kingdom in your heart. I was wrong. You were right. Forgive me. Judas." Joseph read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it, put it in his pocket, and he carried it to Britain too. A letter from a dead cousin, a confession, a plea for forgiveness. Joseph never told anyone about the letter, not for decades, but he kept it next to the vessels, next to the staff, because forgiveness is heavier than gold, and carrying it is the only way to be free. Years passed. Joseph grew old. His hair turned white. His hands trembled. His eyes grew dim, but he still told the story, every night, by the fire, to anyone who would listen, about a blind beggar named Eleazar who heard a heart crack, about a fisherman named Peter who denied Jesus 3 times and was forgiven 3 times, about a cousin named Judas who chose death instead of asking for mercy, and about a rich young ruler who walked away from Jesus and then walked back. "Why did you come back?" the children would ask. Joseph would smile, his old eyes crinkling, "Because he never stopped calling my name." "But how did you hear him? How did you know?" Joseph would close his eyes, remembering, at the Jordan River, when I knelt in front of him, he looked at me, and he said, Joseph would pause. What did he say? He said, "You lack one thing." And I thought he meant money, or possessions, or power, but he didn't. What did he mean? Joseph would lean forward. His voice would drop to a whisper. He meant that I lacked the courage to be loved. I had everything, but I didn't know how to let someone love me for free. So I walked away, because walking away was easier than being loved. The children would go quiet, but then I came back, and he was still there, waiting. Does he always wait? Joseph would nod. Always, until your last breath. And even after, one night, Joseph didn't come to the fire. The villagers found him in his small hut, lying on his bed. The vessels beside him, the letter beside him. His eyes were open, looking at the ceiling, but he wasn't breathing. He was gone. The villagers buried him on the hill at Glastonbury, next to the thorn tree that grew from his staff. They say that on the day he died, the tree bloomed twice, once at sunrise, once at sunset, and they say that when they closed his eyes, they saw something strange. His hands, the empty hands, the hands that had held gold and silver and coins from a dozen nations, they were folded across his chest, and between them was nothing, nothing at all, because he had finally learned that nothing is everything, that empty hands are full hands, that the man who has nothing has the only thing that matters, love. But here's the question: why isn't Joseph in the Bible? Why did the gospel writers hide his name? Why do we know the rich young ruler as a certain man instead of Joseph of Arimathea? Because Joseph asked them to. He didn't want his name in the book. He wanted God's name there, not his. He had spent his whole life being known, rich, powerful, important. In the end, he wanted to be unknown, so that Christ could be known. That's the hidden gospel. The gospel they didn't tell you. The gospel that says you can walk away. You can say no. You can choose fear over faith, and God will still be waiting, not because you deserve it, because he loves you. And he never stops calling your name. One question remains. Eleazar the blind beggar. He heard Joseph's heart crack at the Jordan River. But did Eleazar ever meet Jesus? Did he ever receive his sight? And what did he see? When he finally opened his eyes, the sound of a staff being planted in the ground, then leaves rustling, then silence. The kind of silence that comes after a long story, the kind that makes you want to sit still and just be. Remember Joseph's empty hands. Those hands touched gold. Those hands touched blood. Those hands touched the face of Jesus. And now, those hands are folded, waiting for you to ask the question that matters most. What are you holding on to that's holding you back? You've been waiting for an answer since the first minute of this story. You've been asking yourself, why did the gospel writers hide his name? Why didn't they tell us that the rich young ruler and Joseph of Arimathea are the same man? Why did Joseph want to be forgotten? Here's the truth. Joseph didn't want to be forgotten. He wanted you to find him yourself. He wanted you to dig, to search, to ask the questions that no one else is asking. Because that's what the hidden gospel is, not a secret, a treasure. A treasure that only reveals itself to the ones who are willing to look for it. Let me tell you about Eleazar, the blind beggar by the roadside. Remember him? He heard Joseph's heart crack at the Jordan River, heard the hesitation, heard the fear, but Eleazar never met Jesus. Not that day. Not the next, not until after the resurrection, after Joseph had already left for Britain, after the story had already spread. Eleazar was still sitting by the roadside, still blind, still begging, still listening. But now he was listening for something different, not for coins, for footsteps, the footsteps of someone who had met the risen king. One day, a man came down the road. His footsteps were light, not heavy like Joseph's, not fast like Peter's, light, like a man who had nothing to lose. "Excuse me," Eleazar called out. "Can you spare a coin?" The man stopped. "I have no coins," the man said. Eleazar sighed. "Another poor man, another empty purse, but I have something better," the man said. "What?" "A story." The man sat down next to Eleazar, and he told him about a rich young ruler who walked away from Jesus, who came back, who gave away everything, who buried Jesus in his own tomb, who traveled to the edge of the world with nothing but a staff and a memory. When the man finished, Eleazar was crying, not because he was sad, because he realized something. "That rich young ruler," Eleazar said. "He stopped in front of me. Years ago, I heard his heart crack." The man nodded. "I know." "How do you know?" The man stood up, put his hand on Eleazar's shoulder. "Because I was there." And then the man walked away. Light footsteps, fading into the distance. Eleazar never saw his face, but he didn't need to, because he finally understood. The story wasn't about Joseph. It wasn't about the rich young ruler. It wasn't about the man who walked away. It was about the one who waited. Eleazar died 3 years later, still blind, still begging, still listening. But on his last night, His friend Nathan sat beside him. "Are you afraid?" Nathan asked. Eleazar shook his head. "Why not?" "Because I finally heard it." "Heard what?" Eleazar smiled. A blind man's smile. "The kind that sees something you can't. The footsteps I've been waiting for. Light footsteps. Like a man who has nothing to lose." Nathan looked at the door. No one was there. "Eleazar, there's no one there." Eleazar's smile grew wider. "Yes, there is." And then he closed his eyes and opened them again. For the first time. Now, let me tell you why this story matters. Not because Joseph was special, not because he gave away his fortune, not because he traveled to Britain or carried vessels or planted a thorn tree. This story matters because Joseph was ordinary. He was afraid. He was selfish. He said no to God. He walked away. And God still loved him. God still waited. God still called his name. That's the hidden gospel, the one they don't preach from the pulpit. Because it's dangerous. It means that no one is too far gone. It means that every no can become a yes. It means that the man who walked away from Jesus is the same man who gave Jesus a tomb, the same man who carried his story to the end of the world, the same man who is sitting in heaven right now, waiting for you. You, yes, you, the one reading this, or listening, or watching. You've walked away from something. Maybe God, maybe a dream, maybe a person you loved. You told yourself it was too late. You told yourself you'd used up your chances. You told yourself that God was done with you. But here's the truth, the same truth that Joseph discovered at the Jordan River, the same truth that Eleazar heard in the footsteps, the same truth that Jesus whispered to Peter after the rooster crowed. "I never stopped calling your name. You think you walked away." Joseph walked away first, and Jesus waited. You think you denied him? Peter denied him 3 times, and Jesus restored him. You think you betrayed him? Judas betrayed him, and Jesus still called him friend. There is no sin that outruns grace. There is no distance that outlasts love. There is no that God cannot turn into yes. So what are you holding on to? What's in your hands right now? Gold, silver, coins from a dozen nations, fear, pride. A grudge you've been nursing for years. A lie you've been telling yourself. Joseph opened his hands. He let it all fall. And when his hands were empty, they were finally full. Full of peace, full of purpose, full of the only thing that matters, love. Not the kind of love that demands, the kind that waits, the kind that watches from the window, the kind that runs down the road when it sees you coming, the kind that throws a party for a son who wasted everything, the kind that says, "I knew you would come back. I never stopped calling your name." This is the hidden gospel, the one they didn't put in the Sunday school curriculum, the one that doesn't fit on a bumper sticker, the one that sounds too good to be true, but it is true. It is the truest thing you will ever hear. You can walk away. You can say no. You can choose fear over faith 1,000 times, and God will still be there, arms open, feet bleeding from running toward you, whispering your name. Come home. Come home. Come home. So here's your CTA, not a demand, not a guilt trip, not a you better do this or else, just an invitation. Close your eyes, take a breath, and ask yourself, what am I holding on to that's holding me back? Then open your hands right now, wherever you are. Open your hands, let it fall, and listen, because in the silence you'll hear it. Footsteps, light footsteps, like a man who has nothing to lose, coming toward you. And a voice, the voice that has been calling your name since before you were born. I never stopped. I never will. Come home. This is the hidden gospel. This is the story they didn't tell you. This is the man who walked away. And this is the God who waited. Now go, tell someone. Because the world needs to know. No one is too far gone. No one has used up their chances. No one is beyond love. Not you, not me, not the rich young ruler, not the blind beggar, not the fisherman who denied, not the cousin who betrayed, not anyone, ever. Post-credit scene. A hill in Glastonbury. A thorn tree, blooming in the snow, and at the base of the tree, a small wooden box. Inside the box, a folded letter. The letter Judas wrote to Joseph, the one Joseph carried across the sea, the one he kept until his dying breath. The letter says, "Joseph, you were always the brave one. Not me. I followed Jesus because I wanted power. You followed him because you wanted love. I wanted a kingdom on earth. You wanted a kingdom in your heart. I was wrong. You were right. Forgive me, Judas. But at the bottom of the letter, there's something else, something Joseph added years later, in shaky, old man handwriting. Judas, I forgave you the moment I read this. But more importantly, he forgave you too. He always did. Your cousin, Joseph, and beneath that, one more line, written in a different hand. A hand that wasn't Joseph's, a hand that had holes in it. I never stopped calling your name either. Judas. See you soon, Jesus.
Even in the deepest winter, the sacred thorn blossoms, a symbol of the promise brought to this ancient land.